Welcome to the Veterans Psychedelic Discourse. We are a group that advocates for safe and responsible exploration of mental health treatments. This is not a platform for the solicitation of illegal substances. So today, we're going to be talking about the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. And to help us with this, we have Eric Ohlson with us today. Eric served in the Marine Corps from 1999 to 2004 as a crew chief at the President's Helicopter Squadron. Today, he works as a business consultant and a transformation coach supporting veterans. And he's passionate about creating a world that heals our relationship with nature and supports the expression of light and creativity in each of us. So without any further ado, I'd like everyone to welcome Eric. Thanks for joining us. So we have a PowerPoint for our presentation today. So without further ado, I'm handing it off to you, Eric.
Thanks, Alex, and hello to everyone watching this. Today, we're going to talk about personal transformation, and by that, I'm talking about transforming our lives from the darkness, away from the darkness, and towards the light that I believe is already within each of us. And we're going to talk about that through the lens of the hero's journey. I'll explain what that is in just a little bit. So before we get into it, I just want to start with a quick summary of the points I want to make, and then we'll dive into the hero's journey and the rest of it. So I believe that humans have a natural tendency towards happiness, just like the sunflowers or plants can orient towards the sun, or this young man who I saw in Africa at the beginning of the year, he heard some drumming happening and just spontaneously burst into dancing. These are examples of the tendency I believe that all of us have towards wanting to thrive and find joy and celebrate life. But along our journey, we can get lost. And so just like you see, these sunflowers are disconnected now from the sun because the clouds have come in, or this man is looking out, sort of lost over the water here. We can lose our way in our search for happiness in life. And it's possible to get stuck here and spend your whole life here and never find the way out. But it's also possible to get back on track. And I believe that we can do that by undergoing a journey of personal transformation. And that's what this talk is about. So personal transformation, how do we do that? And we'll talk about it through the lens of the hero's journey. The other point I want to make is that plant medicines can help us as we undergo this sort of transformation. I'll just share a little bit about who I am, and then we'll get into the story. So my name's Eric. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps as a helicopter mechanic and crew chief at Marine One. Got out, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life, but people seemed to go to school, so I was like, well, maybe I'll go to college and see if that helps me figure out what I want to do. So I got out and went to school and on to graduate school after that. And again, not really sure what I wanted to do. I started working in business, and on paper, I was pretty successful as far as things go for being a veteran and getting out of the military, going to school, getting a good job. But like a lot of veterans, I felt kind of lost. Where do I fit in life after the military? And by the way, that's not a phenomenon that's specific to veterans. I think all of us in this world have to figure out, well, what's our calling? Where do we fit in? What's our mission? I know it's a topic that comes up a lot, especially for veterans as they get out. And it's something I had to deal with. And so, like I said, on paper, I was happy, but in my life, I was not happy. And I was going through some old pictures the other day, and I found this one. It was from the mid 2010s or something like that. And I just was at some sort of a business dinner after work, and I don't know who took this picture, but I wasn't really happy. Like I was there. I don't know why I was there. I felt lost in life. And, but I knew that there was something that I wanted to aspire to that was higher than what I was feeling. I knew there was more to life. And so I had this desire to transform myself. And it's not like I was suffering from PTSD or severe trauma. I probably had some depression and maybe a bit of anxiety, but I knew there was more to life, and I wanted to transform. And over time, I was able to. And that's a picture of me just over the summer. And I'm really grateful for the transformation that's happened in my life. And I'm going to share a bit more about my story and some of the tools that have helped me. But some of the things that have really mattered in my life now are connection to other people. So finding community, and that's so important, especially for veterans. We spend time in the military, and we're brothers and sisters together, side by side for all these years. And then you get out, and where do you fit in? Where's your tribe? So, but you can find a tribe again, and you can do that by finding hobbies or meeting people with common interests. So finding tribe was important to me. Reconnecting with a higher power, for me, that was through nature, spending time in nature with animals and plants, and feeling that there's something bigger that we're all a part of. And then finding hobbies. So finding meaning beyond just my work. Work drove me. I thought that was the meaning of my life, but I discovered other things like music and dance and yoga and some of the other modalities I'll share with you over time. So anyway, that's just a little bit about who I am, but I'll give you a sense of what we're going to look at in today's talk. So we're going to start with an overview of the hero's journey. And then we'll give two examples of the hero's journey. First, military service as a journey, but then personal transformation as a journey. I'll keep the military service portion a bit brief, and then we'll spend most of our time on personal transformation. And given the nature of this forum, we'll spend time talking about plant medicines as part of the personal transformation as well. As I'm going along, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I won't be monitoring the chat, but you can come off mute. All right, so I'm going to start with an overview of what the hero's journey is for those who aren't familiar with it. And actually, there's probably many people who are familiar with it. We've heard of it, but we don't really know what it is. So where did it come from? There was a man named Joseph Campbell. He was a student of mythology, and he studied myths from around the world, different cultures, and he saw commonality in these. He saw that there was similar story arc in a lot of these, and he came up with this metaphor called the hero's journey to describe what those common features are in these stories that he sees in different cultures. I'm going to share with you those features on the next slide, but just wanted to share here a quick quote that he gave that I really like, and it's something that's relevant for transformation. He says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And fear can come up a lot in the journey of personal transformation, because transforming by nature asks us to leave what's comfortable to us and go into some new world, and that often entails fear. But saying yes to that fear, not numbing to it or not trying to suppress it, but saying yes, it's there, and I'm going to continue to walk forward. I'm going to say yes to life. That brings us into what Campbell described as the treasure we seek. So Campbell came up with the hero's journey, and Christopher Vogler came up with a version of it for writers and for movie makers, and that's a version we're going to look at on the next slide here. But I like this quote he said. "The young in their innocence are often wise and capable of teaching the old." And the reason this relates to the story of transformation is he's talking about innocence. And so often, really what we're transforming to is maybe back to a state that we were originally in, a state of innocence, of openness, of wonder to the world. All right, so how does the hero's journey actually work? What is it now? Totally a little bit about where it came from, but the hero's journey is comprised of a series of stages, and this is Vogler's conception of it. But the hero starts out in the ordinary world. So this is where you might be today. It's safe, it's familiar. You kind of know how things work. You're familiar with the characters in your life. But along the way, you can encounter some call to adventure. So maybe somebody comes in and invites you to do something, or maybe it's some internal yearning for some new way of being in the world that you want to do. So the call to adventure can come in different forms, but the call of adventure is asking you to leave this ordinary, perhaps comfortable world, and to go into some new world that's unfamiliar. So it entails some risk, and often the character in the story, or you in your life, can refuse the call and say, no, I'm not really sure where that new path is going to take me. I'm really comfortable where I'm at. So this next stage is the refusal of the call, and there can be multiple rounds of this saying no. But next is the meeting of the mentor. So often in the stories, someone will come along who's maybe more experienced or wiser, or perhaps has gone along this path, the same path that you're contemplating before. And the mentor can inspire us in our journey to take the step and to accept it. And so once we've accepted our journey, we go into this phase of commitment called crossing the threshold. So we're picking up our pack and we're starting to move down the path, and we're saying, yes, I'm going to do this. And of course, by virtue of doing that, you're saying goodbye to the ordinary world. So you don't know what's going to happen, and you encounter tests, you encounter enemies, challenges, but you also encounter allies. So unexpected friends come along, little gifts and surprises show up along the way. But as we move along the path, we approach what's called the cave. And this is, the cave is where what Joseph Campbell would call the dragon resides. It's the thing that we're going for, the purpose of the quest, whatever that is. So we're approaching the cave, and so it's starting to get a little more serious. And when we get to the cave itself, we encounter the dragon. And I mean dragon metaphorically. That's for you to decide what that is in your life. But as we encounter the dragon or the ordeal, there's some sort of a struggle or a battle or an ordeal that we have to go through, and it can be uncomfortable. We don't know if we're going to survive or not. But if we do survive and we come out of it, then there's a reward. We've slain the dragon. Perhaps there's a treasure, or we've earned some sort of a right to celebrate. Our energy is replenished. And it's time to begin the road back. So at this point, we're committing to completing the journey. And sometimes in the story arc, there will be an action or a force that initiates us, that prompts us along to return back to where we came from. And as the hero goes along, he's reborn, he or she is reborn or transformed, and there may be another battle to prove this heroic status. So whatever happened in here in the ordeal, you transformed, and there's some new reward. You've taken on a new identity or skill, perhaps. And in the second battle, you might be proven to show that you have transformed. And lastly, there's the return back to the ordinary, the quote unquote ordinary world. And the ordinary world is still the ordinary world, but you are transformed. You're sharing the elixir, as Joseph Campbell calls it, with the rest of the world, whatever it is that you're bringing back, some boon or some gift. Maybe it's love or wisdom, or the story of surviving the special world that you went into. And then the hero embarks on a new life, forever influenced by the journey. Okay, I'll keep this section fairly brief. This is going to be military service through the lens of the hero's journey. And I want to add the caveat here that I am not implying that everybody who serves in the military is a hero. What I'm saying is that this is a journey that somebody who joins the military goes through. And I'm going to show you the stages of the hero's journey through that lens. And this is very abbreviated. I'm not going to take you through all 12 steps. I'm going to take you through the main phases of the story arc. But first, there's that call to adventure. So you think before you join the military, you're at home in your regular life, and something prompts you to join the military. So the call to adventure. And we all have different reasons for that. The RAND Corporation did a survey of 81 soldiers a few years back, just surveying people, why did you join the military? And I thought it was interesting to see the reasons people joined. Some people said they had a calling to serve, or there's a family history. Some people join because they want a sense of adventure, benefits, job stability, leaving a negative environment. So all of us have different reasons for joining the military. For me, it was family history. It was also wanting a sense of adventure. Growing up, I read a lot of books like Treasure Island or The Count of Monte Cristo. So these books about adventure, and I had a sense of that, and I was hoping for some of that in the military. I also didn't have a lot of attractive alternatives. The military seemed like the best option I had, and it was a very attractive option to me, just from the stories I heard from family members. So, and lastly, I had an uncomfortable relationship with myself when I was younger, and I wanted to change. I wanted to be something bigger than I was. I didn't know what that meant, but I had this calling to transform at a young age, and I thought the military could help me. So again, this is the abbreviated version of the hero's journey, but we've got the call to adventure. We've said yes. And then there's the ordeal and the initiation. And I'm just going to keep this to basic training, but there's all kinds of ordeals and initiations that we can go through in the military. Obviously, there's war, there's going through MOS school, learning your craft, becoming a pilot, or whatever it is that you do, becoming a soldier. So there's all kinds of ordeals that come up in military service. I've just got a picture here of from basic training. And as an individual who's leaving home and then joining the military, and you're in basic training now, you're getting tested, and you're going to come up against internal resistance that perhaps you've never experienced before. And some people don't make it. You're in the cave in Joseph Campbell's world, and you're up against the dragon. Can you survive or not? And if you come out the other side of that, then there's a reward. So if you sticking with the basic training example, there's a sense of accomplishment you may have at the end of it, a sense that you've overcome some extraordinary challenges. And also you have a new identity as a Marine or a soldier or a Navy SEAL or a pilot. You're no longer who you were when you undertook the journey. But at the end of your military service, and again, I'm keeping it just to basic training in this metaphor, but you can apply this to war and other things. But at the end of your military service, whether that's 4 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, you return. You go back to the ordinary world, the civilian world, as we call it. And whether that's you're from a city and you're going back to where you came from, or the countryside, you're back in the ordinary world, but you're no longer the same person. You are transformed, as Campbell would say. For a lot of veterans, this can be a challenge. So, and that's what I want to turn to now. Some of the challenges that come up for veterans returning to the normal world, or the ordinary world. So I was doing some research on this, and this is from a report from the VA in 2022 on suicide prevention. They shared this number, 6,146, and that's the number of veterans who committed death by suicide in 2020. That's a lot of human beings that killed themselves. It's the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. Those are young people with their lives ahead of them. And among those who committed suicide, some of the prevalence of some other conditions that came up, there's depression, anxiety, PTSD, alcohol and cannabis use disorder. The reason I'm adding this is because when I saw this statistic on veteran suicide, I said, well, why are people killing themselves? And I thought it was interesting that there's some other prevalent conditions going on. But then there's the question, well, why are people depressed? Or why do people have anxiety, PTSD? Part of it is that this is part of the human experience. It's not easy to be alive in this world. We come into this world, we age, we're subject to illness. Eventually we go. And so that gives us a challenge just in this ordinary world, an ordinary life. How are we going to respond to that challenge? And yeah, a lot of people can turn to things like, a lot of us can turn to things like alcohol or drugs or various kinds of addictions. And it can turn dark all the way to the point where people are taking their lives. But I love this quote from Dr. Dan Engel. He says, crisis precedes transformation. So you can be in a dark spot, veteran or otherwise in life, but that kind of a crisis can be a call to adventure, going back to the hero's journey, preceding transformation, preceding going through some ordeal and coming back out the other side. So now we're going to apply the hero's journey model through personal transformation. And sticking with that veterans example, if you're one of those that has depression or anxiety or PTSD coming out of the military, there are conventional treatments in psychotherapy. For example, I'm going to share a couple of conventional treatments. One is psychotherapy, and that's for cognitive processing therapy or prolonged exposure. There's different modalities for different issues. So troubling memories, these are some of the types of psychotherapy you might work with, or alcohol misuse, cognitive behavioral therapy. The other type of conventional treatment is pharmaceuticals. I listen to a lot of podcasts with veterans in the plant medicine space, and a lot of them talk about how they were prescribed different SSRIs and things like this. I haven't worked with these myself, but I hear of reports of people, kind of feeling numb from taking these, but they can be effective for some people too, I suppose. But anyway, so here's a list of some that are effective or prescribed for mood symptoms, cognitive deficits, and for PTSD, the FDA has approved a couple medications as well. There's pharmaceuticals that are for alcohol withdrawal symptoms, prescribed for alcohol withdrawal symptoms. So you got psychotherapy and you've got pharmaceuticals, and these are the standard of care. By the way, I got this list from a paper that came out that was looking at psychedelic treatment for special operations veterans. I'm going to share some more from that paper later on, but they gave a nice summary of some of the standard of care that's available today. But I want to talk about some of the other ways we can address this, what I call meaning crisis, where we're in the world and we're trying to make sense of what are we doing here? How do we fit in? Where do we belong? How can we serve? How do we make sense of it all? You can go with those standards of care, but there's other ways of approaching the problem of suffering in life. And I'm letting go. I'm sorry. I'm giving you a list of some of the ones that have helped me and in my personal life. So one is just letting go of the negative, and that can sound a bit trite, like, oh, okay, let go of the negative, sure. But what I mean is, for me, I did a personal inventory of my life, and I was like, what is holding me back? And for me, it was, often I found my energy was drained because I wasn't eating right, or I was drinking alcohol, or maybe staying up late watching TV, just simple things like that, or watching porn. So doing an assessment of what the things that were holding me back in my life, and just becoming aware that these behaviors are not serving me, they're draining my energy, and I'd like to let them go. And it's not so easy as just saying, I'm going to let them go, and then they go. Habits can become ingrained, and so it can take time to let things go. But just starting with understanding what's holding you back, and then forming the intention of letting them go. And over time, we'll talk about some of the ways you can do that, working with plant medicines. Movement is another thing that helped me. And so I left it to movement, but I'm specifically thinking about yoga. For me, yoga taught me that there's no state of perfection I'm ever going to reach in life. Life is a practice of showing up every day and getting used to being imperfect. There's no such thing as the perfect sun salutation. The other side of it is dance. So learning to express myself and feeling self-conscious about it, but continuing to do it anyway, even though it's uncomfortable, and continuing with it until eventually I found joy in it. So in any case, it's just so important to move our bodies, especially when we're sitting at desks or sitting on couches. So learning to move is important, and spending time in nature. Like I said at the beginning of the talk, nature for me, spending time in nature really reconnected me with my sense of some kind of a higher power, or feeling that I belong to something bigger than just myself. Time in community. There's a great quote, or one that I love anyway. It says, "We suffer alone, but we heal in community." And I know that's true for me. Getting out of the military, I felt isolated. But picking up hobbies over time and spending time with people with similar hobbies, things like, book clubs or music or dance or yoga, I began to spend more time with other people and sharing my story and hearing other people tell their stories, realizing that we're all part of this human experience, and we're going through it together. It can be really healing just to share with other people. Meditation taught me that I am not my thoughts. Thoughts arise like butterflies, like they say in the old Pearl Jam song. But where are our thoughts coming from? They're coming from the things we put in our brain, the movies we watch, the songs we listen to, the conversations we have. So being mindful of what we're letting into our system, and maybe not identifying with every thought that comes up. Kind of meditation can help us step back a bit from those thoughts and watch them. Music and art, just learning something, some kind of a skill. In the military, we have an MOS, a trade, a craft that we do every day, and then that's gone. Maybe you do that in your civilian life afterwards, but maybe not. But it's important to, in life, at least for me, to pick up a new discipline, to learn how music works and start playing it and practicing it. spiritual inquiry. So asking questions like, well, why am I here? Where did I come from? Is there a purpose to my life? There's 8 billion people on the planet. What is my life? What is the value of my life? What's going to happen next? Is there a God or is there not a God? So asking questions like this and sitting with them, for me, came very naturally, and it's an important part of my life today. I'm always reading and talking to people and asking questions. And lastly, plant medicine is the subject of this forum. Plant medicines were pivotal for me in my transformation. I'm going to share more on that in just a little bit. But to sum this section up, the world belongs to those who let go. This is a quote that's important to me because letting go, I began with letting go. Letting go is so important because we take on these identities over time. Oh, I'm a soldier. I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm someone who likes these kinds of movies. I'm someone who eats this kind of food. We develop these identities over time, but did we choose them, or are we kind of conditioned to take on those identities? And letting go is so important on the medicine path, but also just in the transformation path. And now we're going to transition into we're talking about personal transformation, but we're going to focus in now on the last part of the talk, which is psychedelics as a catalyst for transformation.
You brought up some interesting points when you were talking about military service that I'd like to take a second. So just the idea of veterans entering the service, or people entering the service and then exiting, having the suicide rate as high as it is, people leaving with depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse disorders. That makes me feel that like the journey you go through your service might almost appear like it's the hero's journey as a whole, but it's actually like a very early stage. That's it almost feels like people are maybe coming out of service and they're expecting to be more or feel like they're more, and they're looking at their service and they're just looking at the traumatic stuff that's happened when they're overseas and whatnot, and it's kind of making them feel empty and isolated, and they can't relate to the people that are surrounding them, which are just regular civilians just trying to connect. Would you say that is the situation, or am I going off base? And the reason why I say that is because I feel like, well, I was diagnosed with a bunch of these things when I got out of the service, and it's because like the reason that I went into the recruiter's office in the first place was to kind of add to my self-worth, to convince myself that I'm more than just someone that's their greatest achievement was graduating high school. And so it was like a deliberate act to kind of inflate my ego, among other things. But it just seemed like a very beneficial thing to do if I could come out the other end. And when I came out the other end, I was a completely different person, and I was not exactly in tune with the world around me. I was very much isolated and found myself in this place. But that sounds like to me, just because I could relate, sounds like it's a pretty common thing that people run into. Are you on the same page as me, Brian? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, a few slides before this one, you'd actually cited some of the reasons why people go in. And I think you could really kind of get a good sense of what kind of people are going in. The first one that really stood out to me, and this is why I think it's so important for veterans just to get healthier in general, was the predominant amount of people that were looking to serve. They were trying to be people of service or answer a call to serve. And I think that that's something that we're really missing in our society right now, is what we forget is that these veterans who have gone and had all these experiences, these are like men and women of service. They wanted to serve their communities and help make them better. The problem is the structure and the society that we're offering them when they get home doesn't allow them to heal properly so they can get back to serving their community and being an integrated part of it. So instead they end up isolated. So yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful outline for like what the whole process would look like. And I think really at the core of it, and this kind of maybe speaks to what you were talking about, a lot of us get into the military, and at the core of it, what we're searching for is identity. We want meaning, we want purpose, we want value, we want to be somebody. And the problem is the Marine Corps may not really have the identity that's going to serve you very well. It may, help you get through your service and, kind of get you back to the States. But if you don't have a process to get away from that mentality, then yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about. You come back stateside, all depressed, super anxious because you've been in a bunch of situations that required hypervigilance and were probably crazy traumatic. So it's just, I'm seeing like these people that want to serve, they're being taken and put through this process. But unfortunately, they're coming home to an environment where they're damaged. And if they could just go through this process of healing and recovering their identity and who they are and their passion, it's like so much incredible potential, especially when you're starting from the premise that these are the people that like feel an innate call inside of themselves to help the community, to serve, to be there, to be supportive. So I think that's a real big thing to pay attention to, is what kind of people are being called to go on this journey through the military route. Because like I said, that to me is why getting veterans healthy is so important, because there's just so much potential there for being leaders in the community, for helping to build and develop just like a much better future than we have right now. So
That's beautiful, Brian. And thanks for sharing your story, Alex, as well. I feel that it's so important that we focus on healing when getting out of the military. And I've been talking about the hero's journey for personal transformation. And what I'm really talking about is that healing side of it. And that's one call, but when we get to a certain level of healing, there's going to be more calls that come into us. So, there's a call to military service. You serve, you transform for better and for worse. You perhaps you need to do some healing because, like you said, you might come back with some of these things. So there's that call to heal. And that's what we're going to talk about in a moment with plant medicines. And after you get to a certain threshold of functioning again, there's going to be more calls. You're going to be asked to do more in this life, to go back to your original thing about why you want to join, Brian, about like, we want to serve or we want an identity. When we get healed, it's time for us to step up again and serve again in this life. So the important thing is, I love what you said, we got to get people healed up, and so we can heal and then show back up in life for the next challenges and the next callings that are being asked of us in this world. And we're going to talk about psychedelics, and I am focused here on more of the healing and transformation side of it. Maybe we can talk again in another session, talk about the hero's journey, but talking about more about what do you do after the military and after you've healed, and what comes next. So because the hero's journey applies to all these stages. I want to share, to kick this section off. So psychedelics are probably going to be familiar to most people watching this recording, but perhaps not everybody. I just finished reading this book by a guy named Ken Wilber, and he's not talking about psychedelics, but this quote stood out to me as I was preparing for this talk. I'm just going to point out the underlying statements here, the truthful interiors. I love this notion because over time we can tend to suppress aspects of our nature, aspects of ourselves that we don't like, or that we think that others don't like. And they get buried down in the basement of our psyche. And they are truthful interiors, but we're not looking at them and we don't see them, but they're there. And to repress them, I think, can lead to harm. They're going to manifest in some sort of way. I was listening to a talk by Anne Shulgin recently. She's passed away, but she was talking about the nature of the shadow in the psyche, and she was talking about the dangers of repressing aspects of our personality. But all of us can have parts of our psyche that we're repressing. And Wilbur here is talking about the truthful interiors. So he's pointing out that there's aspects to ourself that can remain hidden, but we can also be truthful about them. And he's talking about the ongoing growth of consciousness. I just see this as related. So if we go down into the basement of our psyche and turn on the lights and get real about who we are, and it gives us an opportunity to grow in our consciousness. The aperture of our perspective is broadening because we're no longer constrained with some limited aspect of our personality and trying to show up with just that. And the beauty of the result is the beauty of our actual self can shine through. And I'm taking Wilbur's statement, I'm just pulling out the pieces that fit here, but I thought it beautifully tied into this notion of why psychedelics can help, because I think in the healing journey, the transformation journey, psychedelics are a tool for going into that, going into the psyche and turning on the lights and showing us parts of ourselves the maybe we've hidden away. I want to start with, and there's more benefits to psychedelics than that, but I think it's a really foundational piece of it for the transformation journey. It's just understanding who am I. So there's some considerations when working with psychedelics. Alex gave some disclaimers at the start of this. I just have a few of my own for this section. So first, the importance of set and setting. Mindset or set refers to mindset. So understanding, why am I working with a particular psychedelic, plant medicine, entheogen? Maybe it's because I'm just really uncomfortable in life and I know I want some help and I don't know where to get it. Or maybe it's you're doing well in life, but you're exploring what's possible. What are the limitations of what you can see, how your mind works. And then along with mindset, so understanding your intentions, and then also the setting. So where are you planning to go on your journey? Are you somewhere safe? Do you have people around who can help you? Sourcing. So you might be thinking you're about to take a certain medicine. How do you know that is what it actually is? It's very important, especially now when we live in this fentanyl epidemic. So understanding your source, where are you getting your medicine? How do you know what it is, that it is what it's advertised as? Legality, so being conscious of what's legal and what's not legal. And being physiologically and psychologically fit for the plant medicines you're working with. So physiologically, if you got some kind of a heart condition, maybe you don't want to be taking MDMA. If you've got some sort of a split personality condition, maybe you shouldn't be taking ketamine. I don't know, do the research, talk to experts, work with people before you just start taking medicines. That's what I want to point out here, is that there are considerations with working and respect that we should have when we work with plant medicines. And there's several phases of this. A lot of you are going to be familiar with this. So there's the preparation. So understanding why you're taking it, the mindset, knowing where you're going to take it, knowing where you're getting the medicine from, making sure you have people that can help you, both in preparing and taking and working through the journey and then coming out of the journey. So just being prepared. And, along with that, kind of tightening up your life too. How's your diet going into it? Are you taking care of your body? Are you spending time outside? There's the actual journey itself, and that's going to vary depending on the plant medicine, on the intention that you have with it. But this is where you are turning on the lights and taking a look at aspects of yourself that you might have repressed or that you might have forgotten about. And this is where you can get insights into where you're not showing up. And I know for me, a lot of times in my medicine journeys, the insights are, hey, this is where you need to be showing up for this person. They're so often about relationships and the people in my life, and also about where I'm showing up, like where am I spending my time and my energy. So in the journey itself, there can often be insights, and sometimes they're beautiful, sometimes the experience is beautiful, sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's both. In each case, it's different and needs to be respected as such. And integration. So coming out of it, this really begins with preparation. So coming out of it, for me, the most important thing is I always have my journal and I write down what were the insights I had. Who do I need to call, and who do I need to reestablish relationships? Who do I need to apologize to, or who do I need to let them know I care for them, or what things in life do I need to follow up on? Where am I out of alignment with my integrity? So integration is just taking the steps that came out of the insights from the journey. I love this quote from, again, Dan Engel. He says, plant medicines aren't designed to fix us. They help us recognize our truth and lead us towards the next steps we have to take to heal. This is our work to do. And in other words, it's not the plant medicine's job to fix us. It's our job to fix ourselves with the help of community, with the help of plant medicines with the help of showing up in light. And when we become clear with who we are, we can bring our shadow into the light. I want to spend just another moment on integration here. So coming out of the plant medicine journey, there's another quote from Wilbur, again, not intended for psychedelic experiences, but it's so relevant. He says, spiritual experiences do not allow you to simply bypass the growth and development upon which enduring spiritual realization itself depends. So spiritual experiences, I'm equivocating that with a psychedelic experience. You might reach some transcendent state in a journey, but Wilbur would say that's what it is. It's a state. That's not a permanent trait. You might see things. You might experience. You might be on a 5-MeO DMT journey and experience a oneness with the universe. Well, okay, great. Well, you achieved that state and you saw what's possible. But that doesn't mean that you have necessarily achieved some higher stage of consciousness in your life or higher stage of personal development. You've merely had that experience. Integration matters because you've seen what's possible in terms of connection with the spirit, with ourselves, with other people. But now we've got to come back into the world and try to live that. So when we come back, what are some of the things we can do? Well, it's starts with some of the physical, being some of the basic things like moving your body, getting your heart rate up, going for a run, spending time in nature, and mentally, looking at what you're putting in your mind, because that's going to inform your I look at the mind as having these different layers, and one of them is you've got the subconscious layer, and the information you're taking in it doesn't just go away. It's all in that big soup of your subconscious. And as you go throughout the day, thoughts arise. Where are these thoughts coming from? They're coming from the subconscious. So it's so important to feed that, to nurture our minds with good information, with good media, good people, and to not, a lot of it's just saying no, I don't need to go see this movie. Yeah, it might be a quick thrill, but is that what I want floating around in my psyche? Emotionally, just spending time with the people we love, and also telling them we love them, and then spiritually. So for some of us, this can be spending time in nature. For some others of us, it could be praying to God. For others of us, it can be journaling and just doing some kind of inquiry. Well, what is it all about? But having some kind of connection to something bigger than just this. The mundane aspects of our reality. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. I've got just a few things I want to say more about psychedelics. So I thought this was fascinating. If you go into the history of psychedelics and you look at the archaeological record, there's all kinds of neat images of cave paintings and things, different cultures working with plant medicines. I found this one recently. So in 2008, they were excavating a cave in the Sora River Valley in Bolivia. And they found this medicine pouch that belonged to a shaman. This is so cool. This is dated 1,000 years back, this bundle. But in this bundle, they found bufo, which some of you will know. It's it was in a snuff powder form, but we'll talk more about 5-MeO DMT in a minute. But they found bufo, they found psilocin, so that's the active agent in magic mushrooms. And they found harmine and dimethyltryptamine, which some of you know are ayahuasca. So this medicine man was walking around with his bundle, and he had different medicines. And I don't know this medicine man or what happened, but I just like the idea that he had different plant medicines or psychedelics for treating perhaps different symptoms. So maybe he met somebody who had this sort of an illness or had this type of a problem in their life, and he had different options in his toolkit, literally, to help treat them. So my point here is psychedelics are not novel. They're not new, even though it often seems that way, or they seem scarier, like, oh, that was some kind of a thing out of the 70s, right? No, they're ancient. What's new is that we made them illegal in 1971, but things are changing now. And this is a picture of Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. This is the actual building where that center is housed. And as a lot of you know already, there's all kinds of work going on. So research going on, governing bodies of approved clinical trials on MDMA, ketamine, LSD, psilocybin, dimethyltryptamine, and others. So there's research going on, and there's movement towards the direction of decriminalization already happening at the state level and hopefully at the federal level soon. Part of this research, they're coming up with all kinds of findings. I've got a couple of medicines here, psilocybin mushrooms and iboga. These are coming from nature, folks. These are not, some kind of a novel, scary thing. This is just me saying this, but it feels like nature's providing us with these medicines to help us heal. But there's research going on. MDMA, this does come from a lab. Psilocybin, ibogaine 5-MeO-DMT. These are some of the findings I found in some papers. So MDMA, it was granted breakthrough therapy designation by the FDA in 2017 for PTSD. Psilocybin, there's clinical trials going on for a number of different reasons, but they've found that it improved with alcohol use. That's an important topic a lot of times with veterans. It was used in this study in conjunction with MDMA. And then ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT. So these are often used in conjunction with each other, ibogaine preceding 5-MeO-DMT. And there's studies underway about finding reductions in cognitive impairment and PTSD symptoms. I'm going to end this talk fairly soon here, and I'm closing with a profile of 6 different psychedelics that I've personally worked with and my experiences with them. I was going to end this with talking about studies that are going on, but you can do the research on studies and find those out yourselves. I deleted the slides I had, and I said I wanted to talk about what's true for me and end it that way. So I'm just going to share a little bit of my own journey. And for me, it started with working with psilocybin mushrooms. And I would take low doses of psilocybin mushrooms and go out in nature on long runs. And it was really transformative for me. I felt this connection to nature. I grew up in nature, and I'd gotten disconnected to it, just living in cities and things. But I would go on these long runs out in nature, along these trees, along the lake, and I felt a connection to nature that I had lost, that I had forgotten about. And I found this picture by Alex Gray that I just loved. It conveys the sense that I had of wonder, just being at a tree and seeing it, conscious breathing as a living thing, not just some accidental thing that's growing out of the ground that we can chop down and it turns into wood. It's a conscious breathing thing. So working with psilocybin really helped me reestablish a connection to nature that I had as a kid, but I'd forgotten about. And it also taught me compassion. So I knew I was suffering in life, but it seemed like everyone else was doing fine and I was the only one. But working with psilocybin really showed me that everybody is really suffering in this world. It's part of the human experience. And so I really developed a sense of compassion that I didn't have before. And I'm grateful for those lessons. Ayahuasca comes from South America. It's a brew made in the jungle from 2 different plants. Banisteriopsis caapi, it's a vine, and then chacruna is the other one. And it's a psychedelic brew that, it's led to a lot of healing for me. And there's a lot of veterans retreats that are going on right now. They're working with ayahuasca. And for me, I was someone that struggled with a lot of self-judgment, self-criticism. And ayahuasca taught me self-compassion, that I wasn't the horrible person that I thought I was. That a lot of the stories that I had made up about myself were just not true. And so I learned self-compassion. It also helped me find a level of presence with just normal waking reality instead of getting lost in my thoughts all the time. And it gave me the sense of being grounded. And I included this animal over here. A lot of times people working with ayahuasca can connect to some kind of an animal. And for me, I connected with an elk, which is not an animal I normally think about, but I had a vision of one, and it was beautiful. And it came to me as though I were an elk. And that's the way in which I felt self-compassion. My appreciation for the animal transferred into an appreciation for myself that I didn't have before, and I'm so grateful for it. MTMA taught me, it was so heart opening for me. So this taught me a sense of compassion and for other people, a sense of care for others, a sense of connection. And also there's just a pleasure that goes along with working with this plant medicine. I love this picture from, again, Alex Gray. It's called the Love Circuit. It just shows two people connecting, and it reminds me of the feelings of bliss and connection that I've had working with this medicine. MDMA was the reason I decided to stop drinking alcohol a couple of years ago. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I just saw that it was blocking my emotions. Like I was using it to numb out. And so why am I doing that? So I'm grateful for that. It also reestablished my connection to animals. LSD gave me a sense of energy in my body. So often I can go through life just feeling kind of disconnected from my body, but LSD really woke me up to the energy that's moving in my body. And this isn't a new notion. This is something that the yogis talk about, or in Eastern practices, you hear about energy. And LSD really woke up my connection to that in my body. It also gave me an altered perception of time and space. It helped me reframe what is the present moment, what is real. And it's not like I've figured that out, but it opened my mind to possibilities. 5-MeO, the last couple here, 5-MeO DMT. This comes from the Sonoran desert toad, Bufo alvarius. It's just so amazing that this medicine comes from this toad, and that people figured out that if you smoke it, it can have this effect. It's a relatively short-acting journey, or short-duration journey. I picked this picture. I wish I could give credit to the artists who created it, but blessings to them, because it shares what I felt, like the sense of oneness and awe with light, with creation, with all creation. And it opened up my mind to what's possible beyond just this physical realm, or what's possibly beyond what I'm perceiving with my senses. It gave me a sense of really awe and wonder. And lastly, ibogaine. Ibogaine comes from, again, coming out of nature. This is from a plant in Africa, the iboga plant. And it's a root bark that's taken there with the indigenous cultures, the Bwiti people. And they take it ceremonially as rites of passage. So this is a longer journey. It can last 12 hours or even longer. And for me, it took me, and from what I've heard of other people's reports, it can take you into a waking dreamlike state. And for me, it took me into my past and showed me my life, or aspects of my life, and how they formed who I became, why my personality came together the way it did. So it was really revealing. And with that, there was at first some self-judgment, self-criticism, but I learned self-compassion. It was a little bit difficult to do that, but that was powerful for me. And it also showed me that this world, there's a lot of violence right now with the wars that are going on, with the way we treat each other, with poverty, with the way we're judging each other and treating each other. But I saw a vision of the world where that wasn't happening. And it was so beautiful to me to just see that, hey, maybe it is possible that we can live a different way. And the message was that it's possible, and it just begins with communication, how we're talking to each other. So I'm very grateful for the lessons from these medicines. And as I wrap this up, I just want to bring it back to the hero's journey. So working with plant medicines, there's the crossing the threshold. So there's the calling to work with a medicine, and then actually committing to doing it, setting the intention and saying I'm going to do it, setting a time and a date, having a team of people that can help you, having a place that feels sacred, and going for it, then going through the journey. And as I said, each journey is going to be different. They're never the same. The insights are going to be different. This is Sisyphus in the rock. It's not easy. It's often not easy. to encounter these different aspects of ourselves or see reality in a new way. But it can also be beautiful. And then coming out the other side, potentially transformed, we'll be tested with it. And that's where the resurrection is. So we come out, we have the gift of the insights that we got and the somatic physical healing that also happens. These are medicines, not just psychologically, but also physically as well. And then taking those, if you do your integration right, coming back into the world, a more healed person, a more whole person, back to that inner light within. Remember the sunflower facing the sun, and that little man doing his dance, reconnecting with that light that's within all of us and returning with the elixir, coming back to society and showing up, because I feel that this life calls on all of us, or gives us the opportunity to go on new journeys. There's the journey of service, there's the journey of healing, and then coming back to whatever life has next for us. And I'm personally looking forward to whatever life has next for me, and I wish that for all of you as well. My last slide is just bringing awareness to some of the organizations that are working with psychedelics and the veteran community. The Mission Within, terrific organization. And they started with working with the Special Forces community. They host retreats in Mexico, facilitating ibogaine journeys and 5-MeO DMT. They're very transformative with people. There's people that can go into this, suicidal or with facing some deep stuff, and just seeing the transformation of those men and women coming out the other side is amazing. Being True to You. This is a community, coaching community led by Deanne Adamson. And so she trains coaches who want to work in the psychedelic space. So coaching people before they go on journeys, and also afterwards in the integration, helping them with working through the intentions, understanding where they're at, where the problems in life, and then after the journey, helping them integrate. So, what are the changes you're going to make in your life, and having an accountability and a guide that can help you through that. So it's a terrific organization. Both as somebody who might want to coach, or to do training as a coach. Heroic Hearts Projects, another great organization, sending veterans to South America, ayahuasca journeys. Vets, amazing leaders in this space, moving things forward with policy, with research, and with funding for veterans too, to go on these retreats. And lastly, Heroic Path to Light. They're also hosting retreats, psilocybin retreats for veterans and first responders as well. And I just want to give credit to the first responder community. We're talking about veterans, and that's where a lot of the research and funding and attention is going. But there's people in the first responder community who are going through things that are every bit as traumatic as war. And I know, because I'm talking, I have these people in my life. And so I just wish the same healing and attention for that community as that we're starting to get for the veteran community. And I wish it for everybody, not just veterans, not just first responders, but for all of us on this journey of life. And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. That was something. I want to ask some of your takes. I try to consider my own life and view where my journey is and where I'm at. And I to be honest, if I'm doing some self-analysis, I'm finding a lot of this path being on just self-mastery. And that's just seems I've been on this part for quite a bit, just working on just insecurity, being honest with myself and knowing what I want, so I could align myself to go after these things and just like go chase my bliss, that what Joseph Campbell might say. Do you have any extra little bits of advice? Like something that I would like to offer up is really for people that, especially veterans, I just don't see very many veterans taking it upon themselves to journal. And which is kind of funny because it sounds super simple and almost even unnecessary. But like some of these, if you're taking psychedelics, a lot of the times, like some of your epiphanies, when you're having truth like revealed to you, sometimes it could be fleeting. And sometimes you could feel like, okay, I'm lined up. I can now see where the direction I need to go. And then a week later, you're back into old habits and doing, just like not living aligned with what you know to be what is like best for you. And so something I'd like to offer up is if you're considering just like putting your own life under the magnifying glass and trying to see where to direct yourself, use a journal. You hold on to your epiphanies, and you could, instead of just kind of sitting and marinating in this raw feeling of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your life or enthusiasm for direction, actually putting it into words could be something that really just it just lines it out so much better for you to be able to actually start following the instructions that you're kind of discovering as you go.
That's great, Alex. I agree. And I used to struggle with journaling. And for me, I found my resistance was using a pen and paper. It was just an extra step and I didn't feel like doing it. And then I started journaling on my laptop and I was like, this is kind of cheating. But I found I could do it every day. So it's made a big difference for me. And I agree that helps me after a journey to write down what those insights were and translate them into actions. I want to go back to the first part of what you shared though, Alex, when you were talking about mastery and coming out of the military. Yeah, because we have talent and we have energy, but where do we put it? And I know for me, it required a lot of experimentation. Just, this class looks interesting, I'm going to go take it. This book club looks interesting, I'm going to go. And just getting on, I've used in the past like meetup.com, but there's all kinds of other Eventbrite and things, and just going out and experimenting with things. And sometimes it feels weird, or like, I don't know if I'm going to fit in here or if I'm going to like it, but you keep going and then you find, oh, wow, this thing feels right for me. I'm going to keep showing up, and you keep showing up. And that, I think, is what leads to mastery, is the experimentation and finding what lights us up inside.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, with the whole self-mastery situation that I have going on for myself, a recurring thing that is just, I'm in a season of practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness is a tricky one. And it's almost it's a very vulnerable position to be putting yourself in. And so I got to say that going through this and expecting to get out of my own way and start chasing after this successful life, I'm actually met with something of like, I have to stop and really consider of how I conduct myself and show how I feel to loved ones in my life or people that I don't know. And also just how I frame the intention of other people that I don't know. Because a lot of the time, if someone is coming up to me and I could see and recognize just how they're dressed, how they're just their mannerisms, how they're acting, walking, I could maybe associate them with an enemy of wherever my stance is. And it's like, we're all trying to figure out where to go and how to be and what to do. And we're all kind of a little bit messed up in this way that it's easy to identify someone as an enemy, but we're just not in the same part of our path. And so, so that's something that forgiveness has kind of been trying to reorient me just time and time again, is stop trying to view people as viewing others as that, and instead of just someone that's in collaboration with this big I don't even know, this big art piece, this big collage.
That's beautiful, Alex. Do you have any tips for us on forgiveness, how to practice forgiveness?
Gosh, I wish I had something super just an awesome one-liner or something, but no, it's just incredibly tricky. It's something that you have to be willing to put. We're so sure of ourselves when we cast judgment on others that we need to be a little bit more patient and kind of let situations develop before we're so quick to, this person's my enemy, this person means negative intention towards me. We just need to be able to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more quiet, and allow people to express themselves. And if they're against us, I think there's a misunderstanding somewhere, because I have no reason to believe that we're only going to make it if we're against each other and we somehow dominate each other. That's the only way to success or a life worth living. And it's actually to the contrary. It's actually more of a collaborative life. So patience with the walls. Don't bring the walls up too quickly. That's all I really got as far as my end.
Yeah, I think kind of on the line of the misunderstanding that you were talking about and kind of the need to be patient, I think really at the core of all of that is curiosity. We need to take time to be curious about others, but in that curiosity is kind of the core element of the call to action. We need to be curious enough to hear the call to action when it's being made. And I think for me, one of the observations I've made about curiosity, especially curiosity about yourself, is it's actually like an expression of love. Getting curious enough about yourself to kind of see what you're made of and what you can do, and kind of see what the adventure looks like for you. So I don't know, I guess for me the big thing is just curiosity. I mean, and that kind of fits kind of the preamble to where most people find themselves when they're getting ready to go on the hero's journey. And then also, like you were talking about with the forgiveness aspect, I mean, curiosity about yourself can deepen the love that you have for yourself, and curiosity about other people can deepen the sense of empathy that you have towards them. So for me, it just seems like an all around really good approach to applying towards yourself and towards other people. Just get curious, no less, be more curious.
Actually, it's an observation of my own of myself. Um, and that is, I found that after a journey, um, what people are starting to talk about integration and a little bit more and all, but to me, it's still very, very, very lacking everywhere I look. Most of the good, even the good people who are practicing as guides and such, I find it's really lacking. But so I've had to figure out things. Two things I found that helped is before I do the journey, make an appointment with my own therapist to do 3 days in a row sessions every single day when I get back from that journey, every 3 days in a row. That helps. Also have my guide, which he always does now, take notes, all the notes you can. That's, I mean, once with my therapist, we spent a month just before we finished all the notes and all that it led to. Just so valuable. And even this good guide, was reluctant. I had to convince him. He said, "Oh, it's all in you. You have it may be, but I don't have the absolute conscious ability to take hold of that and to turn it and work with it because I don't have the consciousness of it." So those notes have been very, very valuable, always. The last thing is that I've decided, and I know the value of this from some examples for myself, but I'm looking, and someone may have found someone for me, so that I can, after a journey, I can go to someplace else to live for 3 days. And I thought it had to be somewhere out of town, but I realized it doesn't have to be. All it has to be is just not where I am. So I don't go back into my habits and my way of thinking. Everything, reminds me of, I go back into my normal way. This keeps me away. In fact, the only time I've ever journaled, I believe, is when I've had to go to a motel afterwards, after a journey, to stay before I could drive home the next day. And then I would always do it. So, and so I'd be alone for 3 days at an inexpensive or free place. That to me, from my experience, I haven't found the free or very cheap place yet, because that's critical for me particularly. But those things I found are particularly valuable. And also, originally, to experiment during a journey. I started that, and I was lucky to have a therapist and guides who would go along with that. And so we co-plan these things. And through some of them, it's been valuable, the experiments within the journey. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah, you explained that much more eloquently. The whole idea of journaling and just using that for integration is so important because of how fleeting some substances could be. You can think of something like DMT. I mean, it's like a dream. You wake up and you're like, whoa, I can't even begin to explain. Oh, it's gone. And it's
Something that
like, oh my gosh.
something
Go
that
ahead.
Alex and I did, and we should have mentioned this earlier, but it's kind of like an after trip recording once you come out, particularly with some of the shorter term substances. Grab the lapel mics, grab your phone, have a conversation, kind of flesh it out verbally, and then it kind of gives you something to work with for your journaling. So you have like some like immediate context. It's like this stuff the next morning when you wake up, it can be really hard to organize, what happened and try to understand. So it's nice having some kind of a relic or some way to kind of record or track, kind of what the experience was like when you were in it or right after you were in it too. So doing audio recordings is always a really fun way to kind of capture the spirit of what's going on.
Mm.
Yes, and I have done an audio a couple of times. I I couldn't get myself motivated to listen to the whole thing. But one other thing is that one thing I found was really valuable is that after a journey, if I did it with an actual therapist, was even better. She would go and give me the highlights before it was completely over. Just when it was, she'd give me all the highlights of things. Some notes she had were particularly important, and most of those I had no memory of. And that did a couple of things. Sure, it put the seeds in for writing, but also it made me realize that no matter what I thought of the journeys, and early on to get rid of PTSD, until I got to the seventh one, which was all I needed at that point with MDMA, I always thought nothing was happening. I wasn't getting anything out of it. And it was a total negative thing. Well, getting this feedback every time, just a recap of it, set my attitude and my feeling about it totally differently in a positive way. Very, very helpful.
Hmm. And this is just from observing the progress of like your state of mind through each of these different trips.
I'm not sure what you mean.
You were happy that you were journaling because you were able to watch like your progress
This
through
one,
the different.
yeah.
Okay.
No. I was just referring to the therapist or guide when we're done right then and there, go through the highlights of what he or she heard that they thought that was important enough, and went through it for might have been 15 minutes or so, or maybe more, so that I had a better understanding of the things that I didn't remember that just went on that we're just at the end of the journey. That set everything right. So I could go back and write more, like you said, but also I would have a very positive and productive attitude towards what had just happened. I wasn't thinking, oh, nothing happened, because I was shown that. And those are all valuable to me.
Yeah, thank you for that, Steve. We have a question from Silver in the chat. Do you have any suggestions or info for people who are working through fear to do anything? Eric, and I'm curious, Brian, if you were to have anything as well, but what are your attitudes towards fear when dealing with something like this, hero's journey, or even if it's
Yeah,
something that you might not even connect it to it, but I mean, what's the role with fear, and what's the best way to handle it?
for me, it's acknowledging that fear is normal. It's not bad, and it's not something to push away or numb out. Going back to Brian used the word curiosity a little bit ago. Yeah, if we can just stay with it a moment longer, even though it's uncomfortable, one breath longer, and just see where it is in the body. What is the color of it, the shape of it, the feeling of it? Just sitting with it. Easier said than done. It feels like a practice. Fear comes up for me regularly in life. It's part of being human, and it's uncomfortable every time. But I'm always wondering, well, what is the lesson in here? So
Yeah, it's almost like sometimes fear is like a gatekeeper for us to kind of evaluate how much something is important to us. How much suffering and pain are you willing to go through to have these changes, to turn that corner? I try to keep something in mind of I hear a lot of things on like social media of people making life decisions or lack of making life decisions based on fear. And I try to, just after like seeing stuff like that, I've been trying to consider not deciding to do something because I'm afraid of the outcome, and chase after it. But I feel like now that I've said that, I'm now going to be encountering things in my life that are just going to scare the shit out of me and get me to jump ship or something. Do you have anything, Brian, on fear?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, well, yeah, exactly. Curiosity is a great way to approach this. And it's from my perspective, there's like two different ways you could jump in. The first one would be kind of like what Eric was saying, like just try to sit with it for a little bit, be curious about it. Try to think of it maybe not as something inside of you, but maybe as something external, like this person that's been traveling with you for a while. Try to understand it, explain its characteristics, like when does it show up? When it shows up, what does it look like? What are the things that the fear normally says? Just kind of exploring it from that perspective, because it'll allow you to kind of better understand yourself, but also your relationship with the fear. And then the other fun one that I would suggest is start asking yourself the question, well, what would happen if I did this thing that I was afraid of? What would my life be like? And the goal isn't necessarily to go through like a cascading list of fears, that are probably not very realistic, but it's instead to challenge maybe some of the faulty thinking and kind of understand maybe where the fear comes from and maybe why it's not really relevant right now, and why maybe if I made this decision, it would actually have maybe a positive benefit to my life. And maybe by looking a month out instead of an hour out, you might be able to see some of that positive potential for growth from maybe overcoming some of the fear. But fear is very natural. You just got to figure out what to make of it. I found that a lot of my fear comes from bad experiences in the past that people might qualify as traumatic. And it was my inability to integrate those experiences that left me afraid. So for me, a lot of it was learning how to integrate the traumatic experiences that I'd had and try to learn the lessons from those experiences. And when I did that, the fear just kind of evaporated. So hopefully there's something to work with there, but there's a few different angles to approach it. There's no right way. There's just going to be your way. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved that. Thank you. That was really good. I love having you as a co-host. You dropped some bombs. I'd like to thank our guest, Eric, and the audience for joining us today. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'd like to join us for a live show, feel free to visit our meetup page where you could check out our calendar and see what events we have planned. And for next month, we're going to be having Luke Schardiger with Delta Level Connections. And yeah, that's all that we have for you today. We meet on the third Sunday of every month at 11. And with that, have a good one, guys.
Thank you, Eric. That was wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.